So I'm usually reluctant to make these type of videos where I'm going to talk about some problems and not offer any real solution. And the two topics I'm going to cover in this video is that people are feeling more and more lonely these days, and also are people becoming more and more selfish as time progresses. Now, honestly, I don't think people are becoming more selfish as time progresses. I feel like people have the same level of selfishness throughout time, but there's a reason why we appear more and more selfish as time progresses. And on these thoughts of loneliness, yes, I think people are becoming more and more lonely, and it ties into this apparent selfishness too. So I'd like to start with a little bit of information. My dad, he grew up as one of 11 children in Tasmania on a farm. The only reason I'm mentioning this is this was common at the time. He was one of 11. He tells me, when we talk about this, how my grandmother had no technology. She would do all the washing by hand, cooking by hand, no electrical appliances. Can you fathom that these days? I couldn't. And I used to think, how did they support 11 children? They weren't rich, but my dad told me they all worked together. As soon as you're old enough, you had a job. Everyone worked together. Being a housewife at that time was literally a full-time job. And were people selfish back then? I feel like it would be the same level of selfishness, but they needed each other, didn't they? There was no technology. You relied on the family, or you relied on the community. Everyone knew their neighbours. And what would you do for entertainment? If you didn't have a TV and you didn't want to read a book, you would have to go out, see what the neighbours are doing, go to the local show. You're forced to interact for entertainment, to know all the gossip, know all the news. See what I'm saying? So I'm sure people were selfish back then, but it wasn't so apparent because you had to apparently not be selfish by go out, help others because they would help you. Share information with others so they could share it with you. People weren't lonely because people were all around constantly. And as time progressed, I'm guessing in the 70s, I don't know, when more and more appliances came into the households, vacuum cleaners, microwaves, TVs, the role of the housewife became less and less important, didn't it? And more women started working. This is a really good thing. Women working was a real step forward because a lot of women felt trapped, didn't they? They were forced into marriage, whether they liked it or not, because they needed a man in their life. Women working was a great thing, but like anything in life, whenever we make progress in one area, we lose in another area. What did that do? Both parents started working, less time with the kids. And this life is funny. It's almost as if you make a little bit of progress and then you're back to square one. Make a little bit of progress, back to square one. By that I mean, when men were working, it was fine. When women started working, that would have added to the household income, wouldn't it? Temporarily, until every woman eventually started working. So basically we're at a point where both people have to be working. It's getting to a point now where it's almost like you need 3 incomes. That's how expensive it's getting. But what has that got to do with selfishness and loneliness? Well, let's just quickly take it to when I was a kid in the 90s. This was before internet. There was all this technology. Men and women were working, but we didn't have things like internet. We still went out to our friends' houses, played with our friends, went to see movies, went to see shows. Before internet, I remember, I would tell my friends, meet me at this location at this time. If they didn't show up, this was before cell phones, by the way, or mobile phones if you're in Australia. If they didn't show up, you didn't know where they were. What can we do now? Text them on the phone or call them. But in any case, loneliness would have slowly started when men and women were working, when men and women could be independent. But we still had to go out and socialise, didn't we? What was the big change? Internet. All these electrical appliances and all this technology started making the housewife redundant. There's a woman at work. She told me how she bought this $2,000, I think it's $2,000. It cleans the floor. It sweeps the floor, washes it, goes back to its little charging station once it's done. She loves it. She's even got an app on her phone. She was telling me that while she's at work, she can check the app and see what the floor cleaner's doing, or she can operate it from her phone. Amazing technology. But what I'm saying is, internet changed a lot, didn't it? And has it made us become more selfish? No, it hasn't. What it's done is it's made us less reliant on people. Getting back to the example of my dad, there was no technology. You wanted entertainment? You had to go socialize. You had to go play sport, go to the local show. You wanted to meet a wife or a husband? You had to interact, find out who's single. You're always forced outwards back in those days. Now technology, and this isn't some big revelation I'm telling you, is it? Forcing us inwards, making us less reliant on others, making us appear more selfish. But I don't think we're becoming more selfish. This self has always been selfish, and what it does is the minimum requirement for its survival, for its happiness. The minimum requirement in the past was you must socialize, whether you like it or not. You needed family. You needed to work together. As more and more technology took over, the minimum requirement for this ego to survive, to be happy, has been shrinking. Now we're at the point we can sit in our room on our phones, order food from our phones, date from our phones. I'm not telling you anything new, am I? Technology has isolated us. It's made us apparently more selfish, but like I said, I don't think our selfishness has changed. It's just making us require less and less people in our lives. And what has this caused? It has caused loneliness, of course, because humans have always been social creatures for the longest time. Like I said, up until, the 70s, when things started drastically changing. But for hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of years, whatever you want to believe, we've been social. We've needed to be part of the group. Our body and mind hasn't adapted yet to all these changes. No wonder everyone's lonely. And like I said, I don't have any solutions, to be honest. I am blessed to have people in my life, but I can put myself in other people's shoes where they can't meet anyone. They might want relationships, but they can't meet anyone. Everything's disposable in this day and age, even people. Everyone's in an echo chamber of their own thinking. Quick to dismiss you, move on to the next person or the next thing if it doesn't work. This is so bad. We get good at dismissing others. We get good at making people disposable. It wasn't like that back in the day. Whether you liked it or not, you had to stick it out with this person. What was marriage back in the day, by the way? You didn't have to like the person. You didn't have to be their best friend. That's the thing. You married someone and you had different duties. The wife was full-time being a housewife, raising children. The man full-time out working. There was no time to be friends. These days we want to marry our best friend, don't we? Also, marriage is optional. Even children are optional. Children were a necessity back in the day. The more kids you had, the more help you had. And back in my father's day, education, going to uni, education was free or cheap, and there were a lot of jobs after you graduated. Now, education is expensive and there's limited jobs. Children went from an asset to a liability, if we're speaking strictly financial. So why do people have kids now? Because they want to. It's not a necessity. That's why people are having less and less kids, aren't they? Or choosing not to have kids at all. Again, I don't have any deep solutions to this problem. I'm just acknowledging the problem, and I'm also acknowledging if you feel lonely, left out, isolated, I honestly feel for you. It is tough, I can see that. And even though I'm blessed to have people in my life, you know what? I still turn to the teachings of spirituality for this reason, because this life is always changing. It's always slipping through our fingers. It's always here to disappoint us. People come and go. And as we get older, more and more people will leave us, won't they? So that's why I ultimately got into spirituality as an insurance policy for suffering, as an insurance policy for the future, not attaching my happiness in this reality. If people are in my life, good. If they're not, I'm going to be upset. But it is what it is. We all have to face this truth, don't we, about reality. And guys, if you have any solutions to the problems I mentioned of selfishness, loneliness, feel free to comment. But again, like I said, this video is more about me saying, I know what you're going through. I have people in my life, but if I didn't, I can see where you're coming from. It is so sad. It is so lonely. And a lot of people are going through what you're going through. You're not alone. That's all I wanted to say. I hope this video helps in some way, but until the next one, take care of yourselves, okay? See ya.